So who are you?
My name is Dave Hersh. I'm the CEO of Jive Software.
Yeah, and we're here on, what kind of party were you having back here?
This is the bar in the background here. We're having an open house here in downtown Palo Alto as a way to tell Palo Alto about our new space. So we recently moved into this office from another smaller space in Palo Alto.
Yeah, and it's really rocking. So the business seems, last time we talked, you had just gone through a record quarter about a year ago. Seems like you're breaking even those records. Right?
Yeah, it's actually been a great year for us. Obviously, the space is really hot right now. You know, it's can't swing a dead cat without hearing social in some capacity.
Yeah, we just were at the Salesforce meeting yesterday, and Cisco announced something. So, what do you think? First of all, what do you guys do, and then what do you think of all this competition?
So Jive is the social business software leader. What does that mean? It's what Jive believes that there is becoming a social layer within the enterprise, a way to connect customers, partners, and employees into one big integrated conversation. So I think people in their consumer lives have gone from a world where everything was done over email to now they're using social software, and they realize not only can I now keep in touch with anybody I've ever known, but there is a very powerful way to make sense of all of the noise out there. Yeah. Right? All the stuff that people are doing and what they're saying in the pictures and everything else. And so those same concepts now being brought to the enterprise as a way to deepen the relationships with customers and facilitate that conversations, to get information to the right people at the right time, to make smarter decisions, to enhance productivity, and ultimately just to realize that they are part of one big integrated whole. So I think all those concepts, now that there's the zeitgeist of our culture supports them, are making their way to the workplace. So it's a pretty amazing time to be in the space for sure.
How do you compete with it? Because there's a bunch of new upstarts, companies that we like yours that are fairly new on the scene, at 3, 4, or 5 years old, like Social Text, you and Atlassian, and a whole bunch of other ones. Yeah. And then there's the old guys, Microsofts who have SharePoints and Cisco's, and now Salesforce. Although Salesforce is an old guy with an upstart, So how do you think this whole world is playing out now?
The competition that we see typically are IT departments for whom SharePoint is good enough, right? We want to build everything on top of SharePoint. And our message has always been SharePoint is fantastic at a lot of the document-centric workflows and content management and archiving, but they are very, very new to the social layer, right? And this is a set of features. Whereas just what Jive provides, again, it cuts across the organization, not only inside the firewall, but also deep into content management systems, not just SharePoint's content management system, but other content management systems, and then outside the firewall with customers and partners, and we're very good at that. I've been doing it for years, and now into social media as well. So what people are saying across the internet as a whole, being able to take those insights and those conversations and bring them back into public communities and inside the firewall, because you can make smarter decisions that way. So all that to say is I think it's great that Cisco and Microsoft and Salesforce are jumping into the space. It's wonderful actually, because it's really fueling the wave that this space represents. For Microsoft, obviously they're coming at it from the content management and archiving angle. From Cisco, they're coming at it more from the communication side, and they're very new into the space. Salesforce coming at it from the CRM angle, which is a lot more peripheral, but it is its own direction. They're all giving the credibility to the space, but in our minds, the reason you go with a pure play is because for social software to work, it has to be open to listening to all of those various elements, all those places where content is created, all those places where people are interacting. We have to be really good at listening to those.
Yeah, and some of the other players feel like it's bolted on to an existing product. Certainly with SharePoint, it doesn't look like they really believed in it yet or have built it deeply into the product. It looks like, we have to keep up with all these other guys and just add a couple features on.
Yeah.
You guys have been doing it for how long now? 3, 4, 5 years?
We started in 2001, so we're doing it back in the early days, but when it first became the kind of Web 2.0 that we know, that was more 2006 that we really started digging into it in a deep way. But that's exactly it, right? Adding a set of social features on top of an existing stack is good and great, and it's great that they're thinking about these concepts and making their applications more social, but the idea of social software has to be much broader than that and much more integrated into the entire business ecosystem, not just that one area that they represent.
Put yourself in the shoes of a CTO or an executive who's deciding on these things for a company.
So being able to speak the language of integration with SAP and compliance and archiving and security and scalability and performance and all those things that they really needed to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we were also taking all these great feature sets and being really innovative and doing an iPhone app and integrating with Microsoft Office and email and Outlook and all these great things that allow the users to be happy as well.
Yeah.
So as a CIO, you are left to kind of bring these worlds together and say it's got to be safe and secure, but at the same time, it's got to meet the line of business needs and the user needs. They have to love it, right? That's the whole point of this. Otherwise, they'll just leave it. And I think with some of those here, we built a set of features. It's going to be really hard to go back to a marketing executive and say, here, use this, because they're going to say, no way. It does not even come close to meeting what I want to meet.
If I was an employee at like Procter & Gamble and got Jive on my desktop all of a sudden, what would I see?
So you'd see what you want to see. I mean, the nice part is that users can design it however they want. In a lot of ways, it looks and feels like what they're used to seeing in their consumer lives.
Like Facebook?
Like a Facebook, yeah, where it can be, a stream of information and, you've got that, the real-time aspects of it. But I think really it's more like an iGoogle for their work life in a lot of ways. They can build their set of widgets and customize it to support what it is they want to see and how they want to digest information, because it's a lot, right? And they want to know, okay, well, I don't want to know all that, but I do want to know what these specific people are doing, right? And I do want to know about these keywords and these topics. And I do want to know what's popular and hot this week and how people are feeling about certain topics. And so it is customizable, but looks and feels a lot like what they're used to seeing in their consumer lives do.
What's the next challenge for you and the industry? What, because it seems like everybody's on board with social now. Is it location? Is it search? What's the next big challenge that what's everybody going to talk about in a year?
Yeah.
Is it real time? I don't.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think the big promise of all this goes back to this is a really, really powerful means for digesting large volumes of content. So this whole idea of activity streaming, what are the things I have to respond to, I should respond to, what are the areas where people need my help, what are the things I should be aware of. So helping make sense of all of this noise for people in something that's actionable, where they can take action on it, and again, that river concept, that river of news, and being able to digest that in a way that makes sense for people. So I think it's got that future written all over it, and I think the promise of social software is infinitely more valuable than the current state, which is wonderful, right? We have a huge future ahead of us, but bringing that to fruition requires a lot of energy and work and smarts and intelligence, and so I think that's where we're headed, and I think we're seeing glimpses of it now, but that future, hopefully we can get to it sooner rather than later.
So you just came out with the iPhone version, right?
Yeah, we do have an iPhone app now.
Yeah, and what are you learning about mobile? What's next for you guys with mobile?
So mobile, you can't avoid it now, right? It is absolutely massive, and the app infrastructure for the iPhone is so rich right now that this is definitely the place where we wanted to start, and a lot of the businesses that we're already working with really wanted to get the iPhone up and running and are loving the new app. And then you've got Droid and BlackBerry, as well, that are starting to make their way out there.
Is this a differentiator now? Because I didn't hear Benioff talking about mobile, and I didn't hear SharePoint talking about iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, I think Salesforce has been pretty good about the mobile. They may have an iPhone app. I don't know. I don't know too much about the product, but I can tell you that our application is so incredibly rich. You can literally do anything on it. Right. I mean, you can find people, you can find documents, you can open up PowerPoint, you can make notes on the PowerPoint and comments, you can email it to people if you want to, you can add them to your contact list, you can keep in touch with a river of news and all that stuff like you can do on here. So it's pretty incredible, and it is a differentiator for sure. Absolutely. It may not continue to be, but for now, it definitely is pretty interesting for people.
Yeah. What are you seeing out there? Is the adoption happening? Is 2010 the year that a lot of people change how they work together?
Yeah, I kind of think about it in, as the waves of industry adoption. The first wave was you saw a lot of open source projects and small compartmentalized things were happening all over the place. Proved out the value of the space as a whole, but was just complete chaos as it tried to scale. Then you saw that next wave of companies who did the first strategic rollouts, right? And these were the companies who were, the forefathers of social software when it came to the big enterprise rollout, and they learned a lot about what works and what didn't, and we were there with them the entire way, and have a lot of bumps and scrapes and bruises to prove it, and know how to do it now. And I think now that you're in this third wave where a lot of companies saw what that second wave did, and they're applying those same techniques, and they're starting to get those adoption levels. I think, a lot of it, there's just a lot of best practices involved, right? I mean, starting with pain points that everybody knows about, right? So fixing things that are broken, making sure you have the right executive sponsorship, that you have the right change agents throughout the companies who are, the millennials and other people who, who really embrace the technology, that you've integrated it with some specific business processes. And for us, it's also integrating with things that people know and love, right? I mean, this is a part of it. This is what they want to use, then use that. If you want to use email, then use that. And you don't even have to use our application, or use Microsoft Office, doing an integration with Microsoft Office, so that, again, you don't even have to use a browser, right? You can be working in Office and still using Jive and being part of the collaborative infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of best practices that get the right adoption model in place, so that it doesn't happen out of the gate, right? And Facebook didn't happen out of the gate, right? I mean, that's just not how it works. It starts off slowly, and then eventually it hits a critical point where people get involved in the right way, and it becomes more meaningful.
I guess I'm wondering, are we, a year from now, are we going to be hearing about a company that's going to go public based on this, on selling to the new workforce? Because it sounds like there's a tipping point coming. Whether it's this year or the next year, it sounds like the way we work together is radically shifting underneath our feet, and that creates opportunities for companies to become, Microsoft or Google or Cisco.
Right. Yeah. I think absolutely the workforce is changing. It's not going to happen overnight, and there's a lot of old school companies who you see the seeds of change, right? And when you see this whole space rapidly evolving. So to my earlier point, when we get to that place where people go to this just as often as they went to their email inbox, and that's the first thing they want to log into because this makes sense of their lives for them, right? It's not difficult. It's not, you have to be Twitterati to understand how this whole thing works, right? Yeah. It's easy. This makes sense of your life for you. And when we get to that place where the average user, the sales manager jumps in and this is the first thing he wants to log into, then I think we've hit that point where it is at critical mass territory.
Will there be an ecosystem around Jive? It's sort of Facebook's driving that, right? Rocky and I are going around and seeing all sorts of companies that are selling games and ad networks and all sorts of stuff around Facebook. Is there going to be an ecosystem of companies built around Jive or your competitors?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so important to have that ecosystem, and for us, that's an incredibly important part of the way that we've built the product to support that ecosystem, and the way the API works, and the plugin architecture. The Gartner Quadrant just came out, and we were the only leader, of the pure plays. It was us and Microsoft and IBM, and I think we worked so hard, to put ourselves in that leadership position. I think that's a great place to be, where when people want to place a bet on where they're developing their, the plugins and how they're accelerating the product and building it around certain verticals and solutions, that they definitely want to work with someone they know is going to be leading the space. So I think hopefully we will continue to expand our partner ecosystem in a pretty profound way over the next several years. I think it's required that we do.
Anything else I should know about Jive or the space that you're in? Things to watch over the next quarter or two quarters?
I don't think so. I think, you mentioned a lot of these companies are jumping into the space. We're thrilled about that. And I think it's going to be really hard for some of them who are coming into it new, because it takes a long time to learn this. It's kind of like, everybody thinks they know how to write a screenplay, right? Everybody thinks they can do social software at some level. And
it looks simple, right?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Twitter looks simple.
It's blogs and tagging, right? It's easy, but it's not that easy, right? And we've had to spend so many years really digging into how you get those sales managers to use this software, what works and what doesn't, and how you have to scale it on the back end. I'm very glad they're renting their space for the momentum that it provides, but I think it's going to be a long time before they're really going to get to achieving that critical mass and adoption that you were asking about.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.